Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the True Hill Heat Sports and Entertainment channel. We are here for the first ever episode of Tru Offseason. If you guys have been with us for True Picks, you know that week by week, as our schedules aligned, we were picking the games, all of the games on all the whole schedule. And a couple weeks ago, now about a week and a half ago, we finished the 2024 season. And almost as soon as the Super Bowl ended, all the teams, all other 30 teams, started posting, in essence, New Year, New Me graphics to their Instagram and Twitter accounts. And the new year of the NFL has not officially started. It hasn't. I don't think it starts really until like a day before free agency starts, and that's I want to say March 7th. But the NFL calendar will soon be turning over. But before it turns over, and kind of, as it's turning over, we are going to be talking about everything that happened with the Super Bowl this episode. And we're going to be talking about, as I said, looking forward, some of the things that are going to be affecting free agency and team makeup. So, similar to how with True Picks, we tried to do the show. We try to do it every week, but different schedules and things pop up. Life happens. Life is life, as Jaquan would say, as drunk guy JJ would say, or sober guy JJ. So we're not going to make any promises that we will be here on a week to week basis, but we will definitely be popping in throughout the off season as we build towards the next season of True Picks. But when I say we, of course, I'm talking about myself. I'm talking about Chase Oliver. Chase, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great, man. The NFL offseason, I always find it as exciting as the regular season. Once March rolls around, we got all those free agents. Then we got the draft in April and OTAs and stuff, whatever. It's fine. But I always get excited for the offseason because the offseason gives us hope. It gives us, like, we just signed this player. Oh, my God, we're going to be good and everything like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
very excited for the offseason, like always.
Yeah, and I know you've heard me say it a bajillion times, but for anybody who is tuning in for the first time, the NFL offseason, more often than not, is actually my favorite time of the season because I am more intrigued by roster building and salary cap and negotiations and that kind of thing, almost more than I am by the on the field stuff. Like basically because if you're a GM, and we're going to be talking about GM decisions very soon, but if you're a GM, what makes you want this person versus that person, right? Like what is the analysis that's going into saying, okay, this wide receiver is good, but this wide receiver is that much better, or this wide receiver is not as good, but they will be cheaper, and we have other concerns. Like what are all of those discussions and conversations that go into it? We saw a good bit last year with that Giants Hard Knocks offseason, but before we get into that, that's for them. You guys saw the thumbnail for for this show, and so we have to talk about. Oh my goodness, the Chiefs, the Chiefs getting absolutely shellacked. Now, for those of us who watched, you and I were present for it, but for those of you who watched the last episode of True Picks, Chase and I both went with the Eagles. Now, Chase, we did something interesting that episode where each one of us had to make the argument as to why that team would win. And if I remember right, I think you got the Chiefs, I got the Eagles.
No, I
But
got the Eagles. You got
oh
the
no, yeah, it was
Chiefs.
flipped. It was flipped. But we ended up when we did the actual picks, both picking the Eagles, and so it was an interesting situation because then at the end of the towards the end of the episode, Romeo joined us, and Romeo, I mean, for lack of better terms, kind of shamed us for picking against the Chiefs. And I had a track record on True Picks where if we were picking for the week and the Chiefs were playing, I picked the Chiefs because I said until they prove me wrong, until some team shows up that can stop the just kind of slow, methodical 21 points, 24 points, 27 points games that the Chiefs would have, until somebody can stop it, I'm going to keep picking them. And lo and behold, a team did show up. Now, I did not think that game was going to go the way that it went. I thought the Eagles would win, but I didn't think it was going to be as one-sided of an absolute destruction that it was. And credit where credit is due. Chase, when Romeo asked him to pick a score, picked like some ridiculous at the time, ridiculous score ending because you, sir, thought it would be an absolute blowout and a defensive showcase from the Eagles. So I'm happy that the Eagles won. I mean, we're both AFC West fans, Broncos, Chargers. So I'm happy that the Eagles won because I think they deserved it. But the floor is yours, sir, to really talk about the how you figured out that this was going to be that defensive masterclass that Vic Fangio put on with that incredible Eagles defense.
Yeah, man. I really felt that it was going to be an ass kicking of a Super Bowl just because the Chiefs, like the run game is not really like present with them. Kareem Hunt is just he's okay inside the red zone, but he doesn't really do much like outside of the red zone. Isaiah Pacheco wasn't 100%. And the Chiefs, they've been relying too much on like RPOs, like get the ball out quick. And against this Eagles defense, they're one of those defenses that's like, okay, cool, you can do RPOs. We can stop that, but also they can take away the big play ability that the Chiefs can do. And when you look at that Chiefs offensive line, it just wasn't built to stop this Eagles defensive line. That Eagles defensive line has 6 to 8 guys that they can rotate in and out, while the Chiefs, they've been like struggling with their offensive line. Their star guard, Mitchell Schwartz, was playing left tackle for them. And I just felt, look, if you get a pass rush on Pat Mahomes and the way that Pat's kind of antsy already in the pocket, you could just keep your contain and get him and rattled, and especially take away the big play ability from the Chiefs. You're going to win this game, and it's going to be an ass kicking. And I felt the Eagles' offense was just a little bit too much for that Chiefs defense because of the fact the Chiefs defense is very young. You have a lot of veterans on that Eagles offense. That offensive line is also really good, and the Eagles, their offense showed up and the defense showed up even more. And I was telling people, look, like the Chiefs are great, but the Chiefs, they have to score every drive if they want to beat the Eagles. You can't have
Yeah.
these drives where you go 3 and out. And then, especially on the key passing downs that you have, you can't get sacked and then make 2nd and 10 go to 3rd and 17. That's just hard on you guys. And yeah, like Kelsey had a poor performance, and sure the Chiefs cleaned up the box score a little bit. They made it look respectable with that 22 points they put up. But if you watch that full game, it was just there was nothing for the Chiefs. Like there was nothing that made you feel the Chiefs were going to come back and win the game. I mean, the Eagles, they respected the Chiefs enough because they called a deep shot. They could have easily kept grinding the clock, and Sirianni was like, nah, like this is still the Chiefs. Let's call a deep shot to Devonta Smith, and they called a deep shot, and they were aggressive. They didn't just rest on their laurels that we're up against the Chiefs. They were saying, no, we still got to score points. Like we're in this situation, we have to take points if they give it to them. And Pat, he didn't play a good game at all. Like that pick six at Cooper DeJean, and then the pick to Zach Bond, that was one
Yeah.
of his worst throws that I've seen. Like where he just threw it at him. Like he didn't even try to like guide Marquise Hollywood Brown. Like Zach Bond knew where that ball was going. So not a good game for Mahomes or the Chiefs, but I felt that it was going to be an ass-kicking Super Bowl. I did not feel the Chiefs were equipped for the Eagles. Like if they were facing the Commanders, yeah, the Chiefs would have won that game. If they were facing, let's say, Detroit, I would have probably favored Chiefs over Detroit just because Detroit's defense is so banged up. I don't care if Aiden Hutchinson is going to come back for a limited snaps. I still would have been like, yeah, the way Detroit plays, I think the Chiefs can beat them. But the way the Eagles play and just how dominant that defense can be, I was like, yeah, there's no way I can choose against the Eagles in this one. And I felt like, the Chiefs, like they've been playing with destiny, close games way too much. Playing that close against like the Raiders, like and other bad teams, the Panthers. Like, I'm sorry, that catches up to you because come playoff time, you're not facing the Panthers. This is the Eagles with this great defensive line. So, hey, man, teams that have won in Brazil are 1-0, 1-0
That's
with
the
the Super
key.
Bowl.
That's the key.
Maybe that's a sign for the Chargers, who are going to be. By the way, thank you, fucking over season ticket holders. I lose one home game because of that. So
Uh,
that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was, and there's been a lot of talk about this whole thing of, if you just bring four pass rusher guys, four people on the line of scrimmage, and you harass Patrick Mahomes, yeah, you're going to win the game. Well, yeah, I mean, every team would do that, or every team does do that. It's a combination of multiple things. It's the Eagles have drafted so well, and they've
Mhm.
had players fall to them, and they have developed those players. And what they've been able to do from that is when you have the Blankenships, when you have the Cooper DeJeans, those guys are able to lock down their respective sides and be able to move around and be able to play different positions and roles more than just kind of like, what you would expect. Oh, a cornerback, a cover corner or something like that. It's very similar as to why the Broncos had as many sacks as they did this year. It's because Pat Surtain removed a side of the field. And so it was less things for someone like Joseph to worry about, what the defensive coordinator, and he was able to call blitzes a lot more. We saw what it looked like when Pat was out of the lineup when he was injured with a concussion. So there was a lot going really well for the Eagles, and I got to say the Chiefs' loss for me was one of the reasons why it was, I don't want to say sweet, but it kind of was validation, was because I've been saying that the Chiefs are trash for the past 2 years. Even last year when they were winning close games, and the argument I kept making to other people was, if you look at Pat's stats, he's not playing as well as he used to. And that could be for a number of different reasons. People aging, injuries happen. For example, in this season, Rashee Rice gets injured, lost for the season. Pacheco gets lost for a number of weeks. There's a number of different reasons why, but the Chiefs were not winning games comfortably. And so once you run into the team that can actually put up a really strong fight, you're going to lose the game. And the thing is, on a week to week basis, yes, the Chiefs are going to be like, okay, well, now they're 6-0, now they're 7-0, now they're 7-1, now they're 8-1. And the losses get kind of not absorbed, but they get downplayed in favor of the wins. Whereas for me, I'm focusing on the losses and going, what was causing the losses? Can another team replicate that? Because when it comes to the Super Bowl, it's just one game. You don't have to beat the Chiefs over a 17 game season. Over, like, for example, if you're looking at the way the Broncos would look at it, or the way the Chargers or the Raiders would look at it, they're not just looking at it, oh, we need to beat the Chiefs 2 times a season. All three of those teams, maybe not the Raiders, but all three of those teams are saying, how do we beat the Chiefs over a 17 game season to try to win the division? Whereas the Eagles only have to worry about one game. They're
Mhm.
thinking, oh, in these 2 weeks between the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, it's just one game that they have to focus on. They can block out a lot of the other noise. So for me, that kind of was the best part of it, where I was like, yeah, if the Niners hadn't had a lot of mistakes last year, they would have beaten the Chiefs. But that is how the story ends for the potential Chiefs three-peat. And now we're turning over a new leaf. We're posting the new year, new memes and graphics if you are the other 30 teams. But this has got to be sweet for the Eagles, for players like Saquon Barkley, for players like Jalen Hurts. This is absolutely wonderful and magical, and I hope that they are able to hold on to these moments for the rest of their careers, because we in today's NFL, it's kind of become common, right? This is the second time in however many years the Eagles are there. Last year was the second time in however many years the Niners were there. The
Mhm.
Chiefs keep going back and forth. But historically speaking, and we will see a regression back towards this, I think. Historically speaking, it's hard to make a Super Bowl, let alone win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
At my Super Bowl party, I was with RJ and Prince, and I looked at them and I was like, it's crazy. There's a person on the Chiefs right now, or the Eagles, and as it turns out, it may be Xavier Worthy, for example, who is a rookie playing on a team that's in the Super Bowl. He could lose this game and never make the Super Bowl again. Forget
Yeah.
win it, never make the Super Bowl again. So if you're somebody like a Jalen Hurts who played in a Super Bowl, had that opportunity, lost, you finally won it, hold on to that. And if you're a Saquon Barkley and you have played for a number of years and you watched New York Giants teams in essence go nowhere, even with that playoff game that playoff game that you had, hold on to this moment because you don't know when that moment's going to come again. You don't know
Yeah.
if that moment's going to come again. The only thing you can do is try to be as ready as you can. And as we turn over to this new leaf, there are a lot of teams that are trying to be as ready as they can. And that's going to, how they do that is going to be determining who's going to be on that 53-man roster, some of the practice squad, who's going to be on that roster come week 1. And for a couple teams, they're going to have some big decisions when it comes to who is going to be calling the shots, who is going to be under center on week 1. Because for the New York Jets, it looks like the Aaron Rodgers experiment is over. I don't know if it's 100% official, if the announcement has fully come through, but the belief is that Rodgers is going to be off the team. We'll be exploring other options in the 2025 season. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I use this as a shameless way to get a picture of Sierra on this broadcast. But the Steelers will also be without their QB1 for the majority of the 2024 season. Russell Wilson will be looking to go elsewhere. Rodgers was finishing up the second year of a 2-year contract. Russ was on a 1-year deal, so there's not like there's anything. It's not a situation from the teams where there's some kind of like trade me or they're release me or anything. They are both free agents, and so it doesn't look as though Russ is interested in re-signing with the Steelers. It doesn't look as though Rodgers is re-signing with the Jets. So because there's 2 of them, Chase, I wanted to know what if you are one of the other teams out there, who would you be? Where would you, if you were a GM and you were saying, okay, I have the ability to sign Rodgers or Russ, where would you want those guys to go? What team would you want them to play for, whether it's as a starter or a backup, whatever the case may be for 2025 for Rodgers and for Russ?
Yeah, Russell Wilson, it's interesting. There's not really like too many teams that I feel like really want him, but like I feel the Raiders kind of make the most sense with Pete Carroll, even though they had a messy divorce. It could be just like, hey, you know what? Let's try it. Let's just give it one old college try.
Time
Maybe
heals
it
all
was,
wounds.
yeah, time heals all wounds. Maybe it was the ownership in Seattle. Plus, if you're Wilson, you're just like, hey, like no one else really wants me. I can go play in Vegas. I'll make some good money off of there. So I feel Vegas is kind of the move for Russ. While with Aaron Rodgers, I feel he has a lot of suitors. It's just a lot of teams are probably waiting to see how their QB situations shake out before going with Aaron Rodgers. Like the Saints, like are they going to still pay Derek Carr or are they going to release Derek Carr? Like I could see Kellen Moore suiting a Rodgers or the Rams, for example. Are they going to keep Matthew Stafford or are they going to trade Matthew Stafford to a team that feels, hey, we're just a quarterback away? And if we
Sure.
trade for Matthew Stafford, go there. So there's a lot of options. I mean, the Vikings are another one. I mean, he can complete the Brett Favre cycle where he just goes ahead and goes from the Jets to the Vikings and stuff. And that's another option for Rodgers. Rodgers is kind of harder because I feel like I would prefer Rodgers if I was a GM, just because the guy can still throw. I felt he looked fine. I didn't feel Rodgers was terrible. Like there was like Russell Wilson is just like there's nothing much. Like Russ feels a little bit where it's just like he can throw it deep still. He can check it down still, but the one thing I want from Russ is that mobility, and it's just like that's
Fair.
gone. It's not there anymore. He does not want to be what he was in Seattle, where he was a lot more mobile, willing to run, willing to make plays with his feet. He seems fine with just doing rollout plays every so often. While with Rodgers, I still see a lot of potential with Rodgers. Like I'm not saying like he's like going to be like going back to his MVP forms. I think we're a long way from that, but in terms of a top 10 starter in the league, he's still on that level, in my opinion. Rodgers, like, I don't get where people are saying Rodgers was trash this season. Like, I watched a lot of tape and I felt Rodgers looked fine. Like, I was just like, the guy came up an Achilles injury, takes time for that stuff to heal. And Rodgers probably doesn't use the traditional methods to heal his injuries. So, it's just one of those things where I was just like, yeah, I think I think I would go with Rodgers, but for his destination, it's a little bit more cloudy because it's just like where is the other quarterback situations in the league? You know, how does that line up? Like, where does that? Because I could see the Rams. I think the Rams would be a great fit for him. Him and McVay, like just let him do his thing. Heck, like I said, the Vikings would also be a good fit for him as well. Kevin O'Connell, he convinces him, hey, you get to throw to Justin Jefferson and stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, there were two interesting ideas that were floated, both involving the same team. So there was some rumor that Russ was interested in going to the Giants, and that seems terrible because the Giants don't have a great offensive line. Now, we can argue that sometimes a good QB can make an offensive line better. For example, and I've said this before, look at Russell Wilson's sacks in the Broncos, and then look at Bo Nix's sacks in the Broncos. One of them gets the ball out faster. But you would then be taking Russell Wilson, who had all those sacks in the Broncos, and putting him behind the Giants' offensive line. And yes, you have Tyrone Tracy, so you have a better runner than Denver had or has. But what else is there besides Malik Neighbors? And if you're going to basically try to turn Malik Neighbors into a jump ball guy, a moon ball guy, I don't know how well that's going to necessarily work out for the Giants. The other thing that I think would be kind of interesting, only if the Rams also were looking at Rodgers, is we saw another trade rumor or a rumor where the Rams trade Stafford to the Giants for that, I think it's third overall pick, and then either take a quarterback or, do something, figure out their quarterback situation. That could be a situation where, hey, if you want to get, say, Sam Darnold, or you want to get Aaron Rodgers, that could be interesting. But, I do like the idea of, on paper, the concept of Aaron Rodgers in LA with the Rams. That feels right for some reason, because I guess, he is the California guy and all that kind of stuff. And you can also very easily see his level of insanity meshing well with Sean McVay's level of insanity. You can definitely see that working out really, at least for the conversational piece. On the football field, that's a different story, but how that works out there, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, those guys are going to be the two big kind of shoe falls. And Armand, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, Rodgers has not been released yet, but the Jets posted they're moving on from. That's what I thought it was. That it wasn't like an official kind of thing, but that they were that it was kind of known that he wasn't going to be there. So
they could be waiting for a trade to the Jets,
yeah,
like to see if a team wants to trade for him. But it also too, they don't want to release him now because there's still that team tampering window that like that doesn't exist. Yeah, it's like team tampering.
Yeah, I think it is a situation where I don't know if he's technically is still under. Yeah, no, I think he might still be under contract. I know I said it was a 2-year deal, but I think it may have included the 25. And Armand adding the Rams are one of the teams that Devontae Adams wants to go to, so maybe Adams and Rodgers are trading.
No, he said he's intrigued with the Chargers. I would love Devontae Adams. Like, oh my! Did you hear Tyreek Hill's guys? They said watch out for the Chargers for trading for him.
Oh my God!
Could you imagine if we got Hill, Adams? And
okay. First off, I don't think you have the cap space for that.
We have 86 million.
Yeah, but you got to start re-signing people.
We don't have to re-sign anyone.
You have to re-sign anyone. Nobody.
Not right now, no.
All right. You got to also plan for who you get. That's what I'm talking about. Re-sign.
No, by the time Tay and Reek's contracts are up, then we can re-sign them. Re-sign people.
No. I'm saying there's going to be people coming up in the 25 season that you're going to have to re-sign.
No, we don't have anyone on the books. We already re-signed our biggest free agent, Dicker. We should re-sign him this offseason. We don't have to. We're good.
Well,
We're not
listen,
paying
buddy.
Joshua Palmer money.
Listen, buddy. If you want another round of Patrick Surtain and Devontae Adams, that's fine by me. That's fine by me, sir.
Yeah, I'll take Adams. I would love to have, dude. Just
No,
having
no, Adams
Adams.
would be, I would if between the two of them, I would go with Adams more than I would
Yeah,
go.
no, I want Devontae Adams more than anything. Like I know we're going to talk about Tee Higgins soon, but man, having Tay and then with Lad McConkey,
That would be really good.
yeah. Rogers has that one extra year and stuff, so pretty much like if the Jets were to release him, it would be a $49 million dead cap that they would be eating up.
That's not terrible.
Yeah, it's
That's
not
not like
bad.
that terrible. Like it's bad, but it's not like that terrible. You just gotta feel like you gotta feel if you're the Jets and you're saying you're gonna move on from him, like what is are you wasting another year of Garrett Wilson and another year of prime Brees Hall? Like, what are you doing when it comes to quarterback? That's going to be one of the big decisions that they have to figure out. But one person that doesn't have to worry about his job, and just included it because I don't know who's more of a ginger, this guy or Seamus. Andy Dalton or Seamus, who's more of a ginger? But Andy Dalton re-signs with the Carolina Panthers, 37 years old. Congratulations, sir. 2-year contract. Terms are not disclosed, but the contract is worth $8 million, including $6 million guaranteed, and has a max value of $10 million. So basically, the terms were disclosed. But I'm sure one of those undisclosed terms is something along the lines of incentives with playing time if anything were to happen to Bryce Young, because they did have to bench him. And he, to Bryce Young's credit, I know that's one of your Alabama guys, but he did improve when he got back. So, you can throw the incentive in there for Dalton, but who knows if you'll get a chance to earn it, because Bryce didn't look terrible when he returned from his benching. But one thing that will affect all of this is the NFL salary cap. And the NFL salary cap, every year it goes up by a little bit, really, I don't think it's ever may gone down like once or twice. But normally it goes up as there's a agreed upon formula from the CBA between the NFLPA and the NFL that looks at the revenue streams from all of the different TV deals, all the different streaming deals. A percentage is come up with, and that is the NFL salary cap. And we received a report that today that the 2025 per team salary cap will fall in the range of 277.5 million to 281.5 million, way up from last year's 255.4 million. So the cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. And if you are teams that are cash strapped, that is really great news, aka the Saints. If you're the Saints, that is amazing news. And for anybody that plays Madden, you really wish that you could have things like this when you're playing franchise mode. But it is another situation where teams get to finagle massage the cap, finagle the cap, and to get more players in. And yet again, whether or not he returns to form, right? I think we all would make an argument that Patrick Mahomes is a top 10 quarterback. I mean, even if he doesn't get back to like 4,000 plus yards a season, 30 plus touchdown, he's still a top 10 quarterback, because it's not just what he does throwing the ball, it's the mental game as well, and his ability to figure out what a defense is doing, but also that leadership component, all of that wrapped in there is kind of what makes Mahomes. And a lot of people were like, how could you sign Mahomes to a 10-year contract way back when? And now you see, if in 2 years the cap has gone up by $53 million, that is a Patrick Mahomes' cap hit in year 6 of this 10-year deal. So it's a great move for teams that are strategic and think ahead, and it's a strong indicator that we are going to see a lot more money being spent in this offseason as we hit free agency. But before we get into that, one thing that teams have to decide is whether or not they're going to use their franchise tag. There are different types of tags. There's a restricted tag. There's a negotiable tag where other teams can still take that player, and then they owe you get back multiple picks. There's so a transition tag. There's a whole bunch of different ways that people can be franchise tagged. But one player that can potentially be tagged for a second year in a row, and the conversation is whether or not he will be, is Tee Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals. And one thing that I wanted to throw up here, because I thought it was interesting, is this. I don't know if you've seen this, Chase. This is the franchise tag at
Mm-hmm.
every position for 2025. And if the cap's going up by like another 20 something million dollars, that kind of just in essence pays just for Tee Higgins, at least for this
Mm-hmm.
year. If you look at this, I think it's really funny. If you ignore kicker punters, who's getting the shaft? Running
Tight
backs.
ends, tight ends
Running
too.
backs. Look at running back. It's below tight end.
Yeah,
And
but
they
both
arguably,
those positions don't get
yeah, but I mean,
anything.
if the 2024 season has proven anything, it's that running back play is becoming much more important than it
Yeah.
was the past couple of years. The ability to break through second line of defenses and turn first down into second and short, or just convert, is super important. Hopefully, running backs can start getting paid a little bit more, but in a combination of this Tee Higgins situation, with figuring out what's going to happen with him and this franchise tag, we also have a hit that came out earlier today. Bengals star Jamar Chase will command at least $40 million per season on a contract extension. So if you are the Bengals, I mean, in one respect, it's a great problem to have, right? Having to pay two really good, bona fide superstar receivers. Obviously, Chase being above Higgins, but Higgins is of a caliber that he could be a wide receiver one on, I don't know, maybe 25 of the other NFL teams. So there's a strong argument as to why Higgins deserves quality money. And if you are putting a franchise tag on him, you're hampering yourself elsewhere, especially in a coming off of a season where you saw what happens when your defense cannot support the firepower of the offense, even when Higgins wasn't on the field because he was injured. The Bengals were able to get that ball wherever they needed it to on offense. The problem was that other teams were able to get the ball wherever they needed it to when the Bengals were on defense. So, how would you try to play this Higgins situation? And also keeping in mind that we have to resign, if we're the Bengals, have to resign Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and Jamar Chase, uh they've been talking about it, man. Like that he might get 40 million per year. So it's like that's crazy. And uh, I'm against paying two wide receivers big money contracts because I just don't think it's sustainable for your team to do that. And they also have to pay Trey Hendrickson, so that's one of the things that they have to pay as well. And yeah, it's one of those things, man. It's a hard thing to navigate. Luckily, Burrow, he will most likely restructure so that way he can help out the Bengals just a little bit. But then you put yourself in horrible situations. Like, let's say Burrow has a couple more seasons where he gets hurt, and then cutting him just becomes an absolute nightmare. And I'm not saying the Bengals will cut Joe Burrow. I'm just saying, like, hey, look, the guy's track record is not the best, really, to be honest, when it comes to injuries. So yeah, it's interesting. Franchising T Higgins, it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you franchise him if he wants to stay with you guys and you guys feel like you can get a deal? Might as well try to secure it. But yeah, it's going to be hard. I'll say that. Like, because who knows how much T Higgins is going to demand annually per year. if Chase is going to demand 40 million.
Yeah, if you resign, if you get him again on the franchise tag, this is going to be the second year in a row. It is really, in essence, a shit or get off the pot situation. So if you hold him, and the Bengals said they want to keep him long term, how they're going to pull this off money wise, I really don't know, because they're not cash strapped, but it's a situation where the ownership has really kind of
Mm-hmm.
shied away from guaranteed money because they just don't want to put that kind of money up in escrow. And players really want guaranteed money. For those that don't know how guaranteed money works, in essence, if I say, okay, this is going to have a contract that has $80 million guaranteed, let's, for argument's sake, or we'll take like the 60-65 that AJ Brown got over his 3-year deal this past year. If I'm the ownership, I have to take $65 million and put it into an escrow account. And what an escrow account is an escrow account. It's a legal account that's used for a number of different things. If you're buying a house, for example, an escrow account will be used. The money is put there, and neither party can touch it until certain terms hit. So on the day one of the NFL calendar, money would come out from that escrow account to the person according to the guaranteed money listed in the contract. If you are buying a house, for example, you would put certain amount of money into escrow. It's considered a good faith promise that you are going to buy the house, because you can't just pull that money out. It can only be sent if either the house is sold or the contract is broke, like the contract does not go through. So there's a lot of ownership where, yes, these people are billionaires, or these families, or however the ownership is set up, they may be billionaires, but at the same time, they don't necessarily have 65, 80 million dollars just lying around. A lot of these people are not as liquid as quote unquote billionaires. You would think, right? Like the idea is, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you can buy anything you want, like you never have to spend any money. Yeah, like you can go to a 7-Eleven and buy out the 7-Eleven and not think about it, sure. But millions of dollars, tens of, like hundreds of thousands, that kind of thing, then it becomes a little bit more tricky. And so
Yeah.
we've seen historically the Bengals ownership has shied away from guaranteed money. And why do players like it? Well, as Chase just pointed out, one thing is, if a player is getting cut, like if they're cutting Joe Burrow, for example, your base salary isn't guaranteed. So if a lot of that money is in base salary, you're not getting it. So tough luck, right? That's why players want the guaranteed money. So there's a back and forth about whether or not playing on the tag is good, whether or not playing on the tag is bad, versus getting that long-term deal that would have the guaranteed money. Because while the 1-year tag is 100% guaranteed. So for this number that we saw earlier, 25.6, so $25.7 million would be guaranteed for Tee Higgins. uh, that's just $25.7 million. If you sign a like an AJ Brown, let's say a 3-year $65 million guaranteed contract, where, I mean, it's much more, but there's $65 million guaranteed. If they cut you, if you get injured and you can no longer play football, you're getting 65 million. So there is a something to be said for having that long-term contract that gives you that stability and that knowledge that you will have that money coming in no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see, like, what they want to do there. But Chase, I wanted to get your thoughts when it comes to, now we're going to see a lot of movement. We're going to see a lot of this free agency happening, and potential trades and things like that. Who are some of the players that you are kind of looking forward to seeing on, potentially on new teams? And maybe I think Austin has a little suggestion. He thinks you could potentially help the Bengals because he says he loves the house in the background. Chase, you have great taste, and maybe you could give some of that money from that house to the Bengals ownership so they could put it up for Tee Higgins.
Yeah, well, I think that T. Higgins is going to stay a Bengal for a long time. So I think that they are going to be. I think the Bengals they have 56 million in cap, and they still have to sign Chase and Tee Higgins. But I think Tee Higgins is going to get tagged, and then he's going to sign immediately. So I definitely think that I think they're going to keep him. He's going to be fine. There's a lot of players I'm interested in, to be honest. Like, be interesting to see what happens with the older receivers like Amari Cooper and
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, to see where they go to new teams. Carlton Davis, he played on a 1-year contract. Pretty much he was traded to Detroit as like a, hey, we missed out on L'Jarius Sneed, but he played really well this season. Like, not as good as he was when he was with Tampa, but still a really good player. Chase Young is always interesting too, because even though he hasn't lived up to the potential of like what he is supposed to be, I'm interested to see like what team gives him money. I'm just interested to see like how much Chase Young gets, really, to be honest. Like how much money he actually gets. Hassan Reddick is another guy where it's like, his he didn't really play well for the Jets and stuff. He held out for nothing. Cam Robinson, Vikings traded for him, and it'll be interesting to see, will they keep him or will he end up walking? I feel like there's a lot of good offensive linemen like Drew
Yeah.
Dahlman, Trey Smith. Those guys are like the guy. Ryan Kelly, a guy who's been a leader for Indianapolis for quite some time. There's a lot of guys that I'm like very interested to see like where they'll end up playing. Like I feel Trey Smith though, like I think he's like Chicago Bears through and through. I think they have a lot of money. They're gonna pay him. Poles drafted him. They're just gonna give him like
No,
whatever he wants.
Ronnie Stanley is a free agent as well from the Ravens, offensive tackle. Speaking of O line people, I think he'll probably stay with the Ravens, but like,
Yeah, him leaving would be very interesting. Would
yeah,
be
that would be,
kind of insane, to be
yeah.
honest. I don't. I thought he resigned. Oh no, I guess that was it. Hmm.
But yeah, there's when you talk about wide
The cat,
receiver,
the cuts are more interesting too, because guys like
right?
Mark Andrews and Joey Bosa, they could be finding new homes. Like I feel Bosa and Mark Andrews are both cut casualties for their teams. Like Bosa, where it's like, yes, he's a terrific player, but injuries have kind of held him back, and you're paying him all this money, and he just restructured. You might as well cut him and get your free cap space that you get out of him. And then same with Mark Andrews, like terrific tight end, but he's a little bit on the wrong side of 30 for his position, and you know didn't really have the best season for his standards. So be interesting to see where they end up going and stuff. But a lot of good running backs too in this free agency too that could find
So
new
yeah,
homes.
so running backs and wide receivers. Wide receivers, two names that we haven't mentioned yet that will be available will be Stephon Diggs, who's only on basically a 1-year deal in essence with Houston, and
Yeah.
Chris Godwin, who is on injured reserve. Now, a lot of people are interested with the Godwin thing to see if he comes back, because like he wasn't for him, Godwin, it wasn't really the speed, it was more the shiftiness, and that can still be affected with the injury that he had. But if you take Godwin and put him on a different team, does he have the same uh, results or the same productivity that he had before if he doesn't have someone like Mike Evans drawing the coverage that Mike Evans draws? That'll be something to see. But running backs wise, you have Aaron Jones, you have
Yeah.
Najee Harris, and Chargers' new favorite in that sense, J.K. Dobbins, will also be a free agent as well. So
Nick Chubb.
yeah. Well, I mean, the Nick Chubb thing, that's tough if you're Cleveland, because like you want to keep him, but like you're not really going anywhere, and also how much are you going to pay him, because he's definitely not Nick Chubb really anymore. But he's taken a step back. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are going to be available when that calendar turns over. So we want to see what's going to be happening there. But Chase, is there anything that as we wrap up this first episode of True Offseason, is there anything that kind of like big story wise, when I ask you this, I'm talking about like from a large overhead view of the NFL, when you see defensive schemes changing, offensive schemes changing, is there anything that stood out to you from this 2024 season that you think is going to be impacting the 2025 season?
Yeah, man. I think a lot of teams they're gonna go back to, like especially for the offensive side of the ball. I think they're gonna focus a lot on this RPO. I think the RPO has been very, very efficient for many years, but I think a lot of teams are going to implement more RPO type strategies into their offense, especially with the success of the teams that have been running round pass option. There's just been a lot. Like you look at the Commanders, you look at the Chiefs, you look at the Eagles. I mean, all three of those teams they end up in the championship rounds, and two of them ended up in the Super Bowl. So offensively, I think the RPO, but defensively, I think a lot of teams now they might be looking at more trying to figure out. Cover two was like the big thing where just at the
Yeah,
start of the season where there's a lot of cover two being ran and stuff. But I think a lot of teams now they might be a little bit more like not relying too much on the blitz. I think the blitz will kind of take a step back next year, and I think a lot of teams will be trying to play more shallow coverage to counteract RPO, but also I think that cover three, I think that's going to be like the main coverage a lot of teams are going to try to install a lot of into their schemes. And I think trying to find more athletic players that can kind of do a little bit of everything, where it's not just you know like you're just not a middle linebacker, you can also play edge, you can play this, you can kind of be a little bit more hybrid in your positions. I think we're going to see a lot more safeties in the box doing a lot more run support. I think a lot of teams that have had success were the teams that like their safeties played more in the box, and their corner would kind of end up being one of their nickel corner would end up being like the actual real strong safety or real free safety, and play back deeper than before. So I think that's kind of like the route they're going, especially when it comes to for tackling and stuff. But yeah, I think a lot of teams are going to implement offensively more RPOs, more get the ball out quick, make it easier for your offense. But then also too defensively, I think the blitz is not going to be as heavy. I think teams are not going to be blitzing as much because I think we're going to see a lot of strategy like where the Eagles how they did well with like the defensive line. I won't be surprised if this offseason and especially in the NFL draft we see a good run of defensive players, especially on the interior or the edge. And I think some running backs might get more pushed up come this draft process, where I think we might see three running backs go in the first round. I'm not saying early in the first round, but I think we could see at least three potential guys become first round picks, maybe four, depends on who if Ollie Gordon can sneak in there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Genty, Omarion Hampton, and Quinson Junkins be first rounders for teams, because I think having a good running game is important, but like controlling the ball. But I do think that this offseason and especially in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like interior defensive line heavy, and teams are going to try to focus on having four quality guys rushing instead of just your traditional, hey, we have a really good edge rusher, let's have
yeah,
that guy kind of carry the load defensively. Like, no, we need four really good dudes that can do it, and make it where we can just play complete coverage to slow down a deep passing attack. But I do think more teams are going to try to get the quick game, the short game going scheme wise, and then defensively to counteract that quick game, you have to install more cover three, so that way you can stop your shallow routes, you can stop the slants, you can stop certain things. So I do think the blitz will kind of slow down next year. There's going to always be coaches that will blitz like crazy no matter what. Spags, Todd Bowles, like they're still going to blitz, but I don't think a lot of teams are going to be super duper blitz heavy. I think that it's going to be very much like, hey, let's try to keep it like let's try to disguise a little bit more. Let's confuse the quarterback more, and that's why I say the safeties will be more in the box this upcoming season. I think that's like going to be the key thing is like you're going to find like your safeties play a little bit more like a linebacker pretty much instead of the traditional safety that they play.
yeah. I agree a lot with what you're saying. I think that there's going to need to be a lot more creativity on the offensive side of the ball, mainly because we've seen defenses do a lot to disguise coverages. To your point, they'll bring safeties in, they'll bring in cornerbacks and use a lot of cornerback blitzes to try to just mix things up and then also try to pull them back out so you don't know what's happening. And being able to diagnose that is important for quarterbacks. And we've seen quarterback numbers go down. I don't know if there's necessarily going to be an uptick back up for quarterbacks as a passing perspective, but I think there will be for running backs. We are definitely seeing a move back to that traditional power running back scheme, and I think that's working really well. And you see things like the Saquon Barkleys, the Derrick Henrys. It is a bit of a copycat league, so you're going to see teams really try to push more towards that because they saw the success that those guys had. Now, both of them happen to be on teams that had very good mobile quarterbacks. So to your point, RPOs are going to become that much more of an interesting way to try to deal with these defenses. The defenses, I think, are also going to try to be getting faster. To your point, the idea that you need great blitzing, I think we're going to see a lot more of a push towards coverage sacks. We saw that with the Eagles. We saw that with the Packers to a certain extent. We saw that heavily with the Broncos and the Chargers, that they were able to get home. And if you have teams that are pulling that off without needing superstar pass rushers, I mean, granted, the Chargers have Khalil Mack and they have Joey Bosa, and they
Yeah.
have good rushers. And I'm not taking I'm not saying anything away from those guys, but you don't need to have as much pressure on them because Joey Bosa wasn't always in the lineup this year. I mean, he has injuries here and there. It's a relatively common thing for him to miss a game or two every season, but the Chargers defense was able to work around that because they have the Derwin Jameses of the world and their cornerbacks that are starting to get better and better and develop more to the point that Asante Samuel Jr. not really needed on the Chargers. And on the flip side, you have Denver, who has Pat Surtain, you have Riley Moss, you have the why am I forgetting? Not PJ Locke, PJ Locke, the strong safety there that you're able to really have those guys with Brandon Jones in the full safety spot to shut down passing so that your edge rushers and your bull rushers can get home. So how that plays out, it's going to be really interesting to see. But I really appreciate the fact that you brought up each episode as we move closer and closer towards the draft, at least, is to talk about what Tankathon is showing us. And so finally, we want to go really quickly. We'll just go through like the top 10 because I think those are the ones that people are most interested in. And I think they're the ones that have the biggest impact on the draft itself. But right now we have the Titans taking Cam Ward, the Browns taking Abdul Carter, the Giants taking Shador, then Travis Hunter to the Patriots, Mason Graham to the Jaguars, Will Johnson to the Raiders, Will Campbell to the Jets, Ted McMillan to the Panthers, Michael Williams to the Saints, and Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle from Texas, going to the Bears. Is there anything here that kind of stands out to you as like off? Because I've seen some mocks that actually have um, the Titans taking Abdul Carter first overall. And I think that'd
Yeah.
be really interesting. I don't know if they necessarily want to roll with Will Levis uh, as QB1 for the year, but we just were talking about two quarterbacks that will be available. And if you can convince someone like an Aaron Rodgers or even a Russell Wilson to come to Tennessee, even if it's just for 1 year in the case of Russ, or maybe a little bit longer in the case of Rodgers, you can afford, at least in your mind, you could convince yourself that Abdul Carter is the way to go versus someone like a Cam Ward, because Abdul Carter seems like a very special talent when it comes to being able to generate pressure. And so I wanted to see if there's, because you're more plugged into
Mhm.
college ball than I am. So is there anything here that kind of sticks out to you when it comes to this top 10, as Armand points out that Rodgers has a home in Nashville?
Yeah, Tennessee wouldn't be a bad choice. I don't know if he can handle Bryce Callahan and stuff, but the one name that was kind of missing from this top 10 that I feel like is going to sneak in, and a lot of people aren't talking about him right now, it's Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan, Mason Graham's teammate. Gets a lot of love from like the bigger names, but I feel Kenneth Grant, for what he provides, and he had a good showing in the Senior Bowl, I think that he is going to move up on a lot of people's draft boards. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, pushing out like a Michael Williams or a Kelvin Banks out of the top 10. And then Tyler Booker, offensive guard from Alabama, he's someone that I feel like can sneak into the top 10 because just because of how athletic he is at the guard position and how strong he is. Finding a good tackle, yes, it's hard, but finding a quality guard that could be like a long-term starter, that's really hard. That's harder because tackles, when you find a good one, you end up keeping them. But I just feel with Tyler Booker, this guy is just so gifted and strong and powerful that I feel a team will look at him and say, yeah, we could definitely use this guy
Mhm.
on our offensive line. I actually feel Will Johnson, he will kind of be like the weird one. And it always happens to a quarterback, unfortunately, as they're like a position that teams that is like one really, really deep, and then teams will kind of, just overlook. I feel he might fall out of this top 10 that you read off. I feel like he would be like a Kenneth Grant would get chosen by the Raiders over a Will Johnson at this point in time because of just how much of a quality defensive tackle he is
Mhm.
going to be. Ted McMillan is another guy that I feel could also fall out of the top 10 just because, combine, like obviously combine will help him, but what you're getting out of him. He's 6'5", 210. He can catch the ball. He's really, really good at football. But just because he's 6'5" does not mean you draft him. It's not like he's not like a guaranteed slam dunk type of guy. I mean, he's been playing with the same quarterback since high school. Cam Ward being number one, I think, is smart for the Titans. They got to choose a quarterback. Abdul Carter is great. I think Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft. Like, that's just, there's no debating me about it. Like, Hunter's good, but I just don't know what position he is. Like, is he playing receiver? Is he playing corner? That's just based off that. But Abdul Carter, I think is the best player overall. And I wouldn't shame him, but you're not guaranteed Rodgers. You got to take your QB of the future. Cam Ward is a guy that I like a lot. Very, very tough minded, 0-star recruit coming out of high school, played a lot of college ball, went to like a D2 school, then went to Washington State, and then went to a really good Miami team. And I felt like, that Miami team, they had a little bit more cohesion. They had a year with each other beforehand. I felt that would have been, a really good team this college season, but the fact that Miami just bought all their players. Like they didn't really build a cohesive team. It's not going to work out. It's a bunch of different individuals and stuff. I feel Shador, like he kind of like just said, I'm not going to Tennessee. That's just it. And so he is for him and Dion are trying to make sure he lands to where they land and stuff. I've been looking at 15, James Pierce Jr. I feel he's another top 10 guy. I feel he's a guy that can go top 10. I know people say there's character concerns with him, but I like edge rushers that are crazy. I think crazy edge rushers are really good. And if he falls to 15, the Falcons would be super happy because they would get themselves an absolute stud. Because what's Tankathon's big board? I'm curious to see who they have like ranked and stuff because Carter's not one. It's kind of crazy.
They got Hunter.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tyler Warren being ranked too high on the big board, way too high. Not going to do that good. All right, go back to the mock draft. I want to see who they say have our teams taking. I want to.
Igbuka. They got you guys taking Igbuka and Denver taking Loveland.
Oh, I would love Mecca Ibuka would be nice. He's a very good, skilled wide receiver. Tyler Booker's not lasting till 24. If Tyler Booker lasts at 24, that is fucking insane. That he is a good guy. Like Tyler Booker at 24, no way. He's so good. Like Booker and the LSU kid, they're gonna go high. Kelvin Banks, I can see slipping just a little bit. Kelvin Banks, I can see slipping just a little bit. He's tremendous, but I can see him slipping just a little bit. But yeah, Booker's not going at 20. That Booker at 24, that'd be like the steal, one of the best steals of all time. Getting a quality guard like that, like a really, really good one too. I think he's going to be as good as Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin. That's how confident I am on Tyler Booker.
I think for a lot of it, it's also that sometimes these teams are looking to make splashes. They're looking to kind of make noise, especially when you're a higher pick, and it's more towards the back of the draft because usually if you're in the playoffs, there's a reason. But it's some of the smarter teams. It's hard for teams to just go really quickly from front of the draft to back of the draft. It's hard to pull off. Like the Washington Commanders pulling it off. absolute kudos and credit to them and that coaching staff. We got to see how replicable it is now that there's like a full year of tape on Jaden Daniels in the
I,
NFL. But
I
like,
actually have the Broncos at 20. I think they go for Genti. I think they take Genti at 20
no, I
if
think
he lasts.
If Gentie's still hanging around by pick 12, which he should be, I think the Cowboys are going to take him. You know Jerry Jones and running backs. Come on.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, yeah, I know that, but I'm saying if he lasts at 20, I could see Broncos take Genti, Steelers they will take Loveland.
Yeah, that would be interesting because
Yeah,
they've got Freiermuth, but Freiermuth has not been. I mean, he's been good, but like, is it like what exact? Because now it's been multiple offensive coordinators that have not been able to really use him, and the question is whether or not it's a quarterback issue because it was either you know. Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky, or it was Russell Wilson who was not throwing short passes, like medium length passes for Freiermuth to really use. But a Colson Loveland on the Steelers would be really great because he does act as he is more of an inline tight end versus Tyler Warren, so he does do a good bit of blocking. So that'll be something to pay attention to. But that is why I want to go over what we are seeing as the consensus for some of these picks as we close out each episode of Tru Offseason. So, guys, we want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, if you have not hit that like button and subscribed on YouTube, please do. It helps the channel, it helps us, and we get to be able to reach more people and discuss more when it comes to this great game of football. And there's more than just football here on the channel. There's a whole bunch of other things, other sports, other media things such as TV shows and movies. So check us out across the board if you have not already. And Chase, tell the people where they can find you, good sir.
yeah. You can follow me on X at ChaseOliver68 and then the Around the Point Network. Join us tomorrow for ATP Gaming Horticulture, a card booked by one of our African American colleagues, CPZ. He has booked in a great card featuring some of the great black talents like Patrick Mahomes, our former world champion and golden champion. He will be wrestling on that card. It's going to be great.
And guys, you can always catch me here on True Hill Heat Sports Entertainment. Sometimes I pop over to the main channel depending on what is happening. But I want to thank you all for tuning in once again to this first of Tru Offseason. We will be going, I think it will be a little bit more of I wanted to do originally team by team, but there is 32 teams and there's only so many weeks in the offseason. So it may be a little bit more division by division, kind of breaking down what happened last year, what we could look forward to for this upcoming season. So pay attention to that when it comes out. But until next time, guys, remember, take care of yourselves and each other. We will catch you all later.